Hello and welcome back to the channel. This is part 2 of magnetizing the Deff. In this part, we will be going over how to magnetize all of his gun options. The kit is supplied with 4 of these ball sockets in order to fit in the arms in case you want to arm your Deff with 4 different guns. On these ball joints, there is a square hole and there's a peg on the gun. And that is how they fit together if you were normally going to glue them together. I already did a test to make sure it was going to work for the video. So where the gun peg and square hole connect, we're going to put a 3x1mm magnet. And then where the ball socket connects to the chassis, we're going to do a 5x1mm magnet. So as you can see, this is the flamer, all magnetized, ready to go, ready to be swapped out with whatever of the gun options you would like to be using for your game. So first things first, we got to cut out that square peg on the gun side. So as you can see, it's a little tricky to try and get your cutters in there. So for the first one, I just used my hobby knife and kind of tried to keep it flush as best I could. To try and cut the peg out of there. Once you get the bulk of the peg out of there, you can go back with your hobby knife again and try and just smooth up that surface as best you can. Once you're happy with how smooth you've got it, we're going to try and start a pilot hole with our hobby knife. Now this will be a little trickier because we can't spin the hobby knife right around, so we're just going to put it in the center as best we can and basically do a half spin, flip it around, do the same on the other side, and do that a couple times until we have what looks like a center hole mostly in the center. Once you're happy with your starting hole, we're going to jump up to the 5/64 drill bit or the 2mm drill bit, and we're going to start drilling a hole approximately 1mm in depth. If at this point you're worried because your magnet hole isn't completely centered, I wouldn't worry about it. It'll all work out, and you'll see in a minute that these don't have to be absolutely perfect. Once you're there, you can get a stack of the magnets and you can put it in the hole and basically see if it covers up the one magnet, and you will know if you're drilled to depth. Basically, I'm using the 2mm magnets to check because we just drilled a 2mm hole, but they are the same depth as the 3mm magnets. Now we're going to step up to the 1/8 3mm drill bit. As you can see, this is basically almost the same width as the piece we're drilling into. So it'll kind of auto-center itself because it has to. So that's why if you're not perfectly centered, I wouldn't worry too much about it. Now that we got the 3mm hole drilled, we'll use the 3mm magnets, see if we're to depth. If we're not, we'll just keep drilling. So I just need to take out a little more material and then recheck with the magnets, see that it covers up that bottom magnet, so it'll be flush, and we know we're done with that hole. So get the magnet on the tip of your hobby knife, and as you can see, I kind of check to make sure the depth is correct again. If this is the first magnet you're putting in, you won't need to worry about polarity, but if you've already put some magnets in, make sure you double check your polarity at this point. We're just going to put a little super glue in. Put the magnet on the very tip of your hobby knife, press it into the hole. I use my thumbnail to hold it down and pull the hobby knife away. Be very careful not to cut yourself at this point. And then I use my thumbnail to make sure it's in flat. Now we're going to work on the gun mount itself. This piece is very small, so be very careful. But we're going to start by drilling out a hole with the 2mm or 5/64 drill bit. It's not going to do much because it's already that size almost. And then we're going to step it up to the 3mm or 1/8 drill bit. With the 1/8 drill bit, you'll end up getting like these curls starting to come out of the hole you're drilling. So what we're going to do is we're just going to go in when they start to happen and clean them up with the hobby knife. All I'm trying to do with the hobby knife is to just square up the sides again and make it look neat, basically. And then when you got that done, just keep going with the 1/8 drill bit until you think you're at depth, basically, and then give it one last little cleanup there. Again, just try to square off the part and make it look neater. And then you can just check it with your stack of magnets, see if you're at the right spot. If it covers up the bottom magnet, then you know you're good. If this is the first combination you're doing, then just glue the first magnet in, however. But if this is the second piece or more options down the line, make sure you're checking your polarity every time, because removing magnets is not fun and it makes a mess. So try to avoid it. And of course, apply some super glue. You only need a little bit, and then stick your magnet in. I use the hobby knife as I usually do, put my thumbnail on top and just pull it away. Be very careful not to cut yourself. And it should look like that. Once the glue is dry, you can check your fitment. Make sure to put the mount in on both sides to make sure it's fitting properly. In order to get a proper fit, you might have to trim the gun mount on either side like this. Also, the gun mounting area, just kind of all along the edges in case there's excess glue or just some burrs that popped up from the whole magnetizing procedure. Lots of the guns will have this hose type or wire type thing covering over the joint. So I found one of the easier methods is to take your hobby knife and just slice it vertically as many times as possible, basically, kind of turning the gun and keep slicing down vertically to kind of chop that huge thick block into a bunch of little smaller pieces. And then once they're nice and thin like that, you can go and cut them out a lot easier than trying to cut the huge block out all at once. So as you can see, I have it basically mashed into some sort of pulp. And once it's at that state, it's really easy to come in sideways with your hobby knife and just pick those little thin pieces on the mount off instead of having to put a whole bunch of force to try and cut it out. I found this works easier. You do whatever you need to do to kind of cut that piece out of there. And then keep using your hobby knife to kind of just make it as clean or as square as possible. And then on this style of gun, we're going to just do a little half cut on either side of the hose or wire or cable with the hobby knife. We're really just trying to get a starting point so that the drill bit doesn't walk around on us. So just keep alternating from side to side, trying to get a good center point for the drill. And once you're satisfied, pull out the 2mm drill bit, and we're going to be careful to not touch the hose wire, cord. So we are going to kind of be drilling in on an angle. And again, same with this, we're going to alternate side to side until we get to that 1mm depth, which will hide the magnet. And then we'll use a 2x1mm magnet to check the depth before moving on to the next step here. Now the 3mm or 1/8 drill bit is a little too big for this step. As you can see, it's really awkward and it's hard not to start taking material off of the hose, cable, wire. So what we're going to actually do is we're going to use the hole we drilled for the 2mm as kind of a guide, and we're just going to use our hobby knife to kind of flatten the rest of that part of the gun mount out to that depth. We're doing our best to kind of cut down and square it off. And you can put an extra magnet on the gun mount part and fit it in there and see if you like the depth and if it cuts or if it covers your cut marks or not. As you can see, I was pretty happy with that one. So again, mark your polarity with the magnet, apply some glue to the gun, And again, using the hobby knife and just kind of my fingers to hold it down. That part is a little tricky, but then you can come in if it's not perfect and use a toothpick or some other wooden thing to kind of center it. Last thing is to magnetize the gun mount, so you can set it in the torso and see how flush it sits, and then put a magnet we're using 5x1 millimeter, and stick the mount in again, and you can see how much higher it is sitting out, and then you just try and cut that amount of material off. Then once you do one, you can use that one to kind of as a guide to make the other ones quicker. But I just started off with the cutters and then moved to the hobby knife and really try to keep it as flat as possible. And you can hold the piece and you can kind of turn it, and with your eye you can see what side is thicker, and then basically work more towards that side. When I'm happy with that, then I'll pull it up to my eye and kind of carve back, doing the same thing, just like rotating it, seeing where the thickest side is, and trimming that side down while trying to maintain like the top of the ball as flat as possible. That is ideal, and you can go back and check with the torso and the magnet whenever you want to, and when you're happy with it, just mark the magnet. I always use another stack of magnets to kind of pull that magnet out easily, and then make sure you just got the polarity right when you put it on the ball. A little super glue as always. I use my fingers and nails to kind of hold it in place while I pull it away, and then center it as necessary. And then the last step here, we're just going to glue on the dread claws. So make sure you play around with the mini a bit and see the position you like the claws, so that you know what you're looking for when you actually bring the glue out. You could magnetize these too if you want, but sometimes like over magnetization is just a hassle and just creates more headaches than it's worth. So we're just going to glue the claws on. We're going to do one side at a time. We're going to use some sprue glue made out of Tamiya ultra thin cement, and we're just going to coat the socket of the hand basically, well, the claw, and then we're going to press the ball end of the claw in there. We're going to hold it how we want it to sit until it can sit there without us having to hold it. And then we're going to do the bottom claw, same thing. We're just going to hold it until it can support itself. Repeat that for the other side and you will be done. And now you can play with your fully magnetized Deff Dread. The lower arms will work left and right. The only reason the upper arms won't is because they have that shoulder pad, the little extra bit of armor there. But if they didn't have that, you'd be able to swap them left and right too. And of course, run whatever guns you want. So easiest way is just put the gun mount on the gun, pop it into the socket of the torso. You'll find that some of the guns like to sit better in one position rather than another one, because of the magazines or the hose for the flamer or what have you. But you'll just have to play around, and when you want a specific loadout, just kind of try a couple different options. Like here we've got the flamer, the rocket launcher, and the two big shooters. Please let me know what you think down in the comments. If you have any ideas or requests for what you want to see or what kind of kits you want to see get magnetized, please let me know. Please like and subscribe, and stay tuned. I'm going to try and make more regular content.